Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to council. I hope everybody had a great weekend full of family and turkey. And here we are at the 29th meeting of the 145th Council of the Corporation of the City of St. Thomas. Are there any disclosures of interest from any of the members? Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Thank you. On item PD 48-25, in regarding the proposed official plan amendment to 21 Phillip Street, the residence is a family member and I declare a conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other conflicts or declarations of interest tonight? Seeing none, we'll go on to minutes.
I have a motion that the minutes of the meeting held on October the 6th, 2025 be confirmed. Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Herbert.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Council will now resolve itself into committee of the whole to deal with the following business. First committee is strategic direction and development. First item relates to the assignment of lease at the St. Thomas Municipal Airport. I have motion that report CC 1325 relating to an assignment of lease at the St. Thomas Municipal Airport for parts 7 and 13 on plan 11R 1602 be received for information. And further, the council concur with the assignment of lease of these airport lands at the St. Thomas Municipal Airport from James Bandman to Smart AMS Hangar Incorporated. Moved by Councillor Kohler, second by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to the Housing Accelerator Fund Initiative relating to Affordable Housing Grant Program. I have motion that report SCSS 2625 relating to the Housing Accelerator Fund Action Plan Initiative Affordable Housing Grant Program be received for information, and further that a new Affordable Housing Grant Program be created for the 2026 to 2028 in accordance with Attachment A to report SCSS 2625. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Taylor.
Questions or comments? Councillor Wookey.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have, I believe, 3 questions. So, Brandon, here's my first one. I see that there could be 4 projects and for $25,000 a piece. My concern is that somebody's going to stack 4 projects together that could actually be one project. Like, how do we define what constitutes a project in that case? Thanks. That's the first one.
Brandon?
Sure. Thank you, through your worship, to the councillor. Good question. So what we have for the grant program is a project would be a development or a redevelopment on a property that provides net new units. So each property would be a project. So if we had an application that was, say, applying for 3 studies for that one site, that would count as one project and one maximum 25,000. Overall, there's 100,000 total, so really you can only get 4. There's the evaluation criteria would also be looking at different projects from different proponents. If it does help, we do have a definition section at the end, and we could probably define a project in there if that clarifies it, just to make sure there's not a loophole.
Go ahead, Councillor Wookey.
Okay, the next one, monitoring. Now, affordable housing, the monitoring of it, of course, is the challenge. And Ms. Sherrod and I have had conversations about this over the years, about how do we do this such that they maintain affordability, that they stay what they should be for the length of time that they should be. And I think part of the solution that we've had is that we've been involved in this. And I see in the monitoring that, I see in the setup that you partner sort of with a nonprofit in many cases, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess my question for you is, I see a compliance report comes out of this. Who does the compliance report, and then who audits the compliance report? My concern is that when you have nonprofits that have their hands full with just their day-to-day business, them auditing somebody's compliance report is going to be a low priority. But for us, that's a very high priority to make sure things are doing what they're supposed to be doing for the length of time we want them to do them for. So can you just flesh out a little bit about how the compliance reporting might work in this? Thank you. That's two of the 3.
Sure. Thank you, through your worship, to the councillor. And that's a very good point and good question, because that's what we are after with this particular grant program, is going more deeply affordable. Has been a challenge in the past to make sure that occurs, although I understand St. Thomas has done that through municipal contribution agreements For this particular grant program, so a successful proponent would enter into a contribution agreement with the city whereby they would agree to set rents that would stay at that affordability level for at least 20 years. An annual report would be provided is the way that it's set up from that proponent. So the nonprofit would provide the city with an annual report, and then the city could do an audit or inspections to make sure that that was still happening. There is the opportunity, and within the agreement, there would typically be what's called a clawback clause, so that if there was an issue that happened that wasn't maintained for affordability, that we could have repayment of the grant.
And then my last one is about, so let's say I'm a private developer and I just want to do a project myself and communicate with the city on this. And then we've done this more or less before. I might have read it wrong, but is it necessary for that private developer to partner with a nonprofit? First question. Second question would be, would we count as a nonprofit? I mean, obviously not in the sense of the word, but could we be that conduit through this program, or must it be a nonprofit, or did I just not read it correctly? It seemed to me, it looks like they're trying to funnel the private owner through a nonprofit, obviously to help with monitoring all those other things that go along with that. So what's the situation there, if you can help me out? Thanks.
Yes, through your worship.
Please help out Councillor Wookie.
For sure. Well, these are all very good questions, and want to make sure as we're going into this new grant program. The short answer is yes. This program is focused on nonprofit housing providers to provide affordable and supportive housing, or it could be done in a partnership, or if there was any housing cooperatives, they would also be eligible. I can expand upon that answer if you want and get into a little bit more detail of the why and what.
That's okay. I just want to know what parameters we have as a city to encourage this, so it sounds to me like we're doing this, it has to be done through a nonprofit, and we don't count as a nonprofit. So a private developer who says, I want to do something that's affordable because I give a damn about the city, they have to find a nonprofit to work with. Is that correct?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct.
Perfect. Further questions? Councillor Peters.
Thanks very much, Worship. I just want to reiterate something that a comment that I made at a previous meeting, and that is, I really think there needs to be a substantive financial impact analysis out of all of this, because this has implications for the long term for taxpayers down the road. So I think I would really encourage you to work with finance to look at what that impact is. And the other thing that concerns me is that, you know, when you look back at the history of the whole community incentive program, the whole goal initially was to try and encourage redevelopment in the downtown core. And now we're going full citywide. And what concerns me is what the original intention of the plan was to help deal with second and third floors of downtown St. Thomas. And I trust that, and I hope that this isn't going to take away from what the original intention of all of this was, and that was to encourage redevelopment and move people back into the core. And that I hope people don't say, well, I'm going to go make my investment someplace else, and we lose out what we originally wanted to do.
Sure, thanks. Through your worship, just a couple quick points, I guess, on that. For clarity, this specific affordable housing grant program would be outside of the community improvement plan, and it would be directly funded from the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund. So this one would not have any impact for local taxpayers the way it's set up right now. The other part is, yes, you're right, for sure. A lot of the incentive programs that municipalities, including St. Thomas, was really aimed at kind of downtown revitalization and adaptive reuse of space. Those still apply. Those are still there. What we're kind of doing now with some of this federal funding that's aimed at housing is housing that could be citywide, which also gives more options, more housing choice for people in different areas of the city. So we're kind of doing both right now. There's still the CIP, still downtown incentives, but then with the federal infusion money into these specific programs, that there's a bit of a gap for nonprofit housing providers to kind of get up and running and get a project off the ground. And that's what this is targeting.
Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate that. I see that this is $500,000 of funding each year for 2026 through to 2028. And I was looking at the timeline. We're going to call for applications in the spring of 2026, but really not giving approval until August, 8 months later down into August of 2026 before we give approval. So what's the expectation? How is that typical? Is there any way to shorten that? It just seems like a long time.
Brendan?
Yeah, through your worship to the councillor, appreciate that the sooner that we can do these, the better. There is, especially the first time that we're doing that, we need to give the heads up for people to be preparing for a project in a grant application. So it's kind of, as you would appreciate, preparing a grant application takes some time and having a real project. Essentially what we're looking at on the timeline is that the applications would open in the spring once we know we have the next round of the federal funding. And really the submission deadline would be late May. And so staff would review it in June, go through the evaluation framework, make sure things are eligible, bring a report to council in July for council to then make the decision. As we get into August, that's preparing the contribution agreement that I mentioned. And then we are targeting that there would be some performance standards in there that at least by the next June, the pre-construction works have to be done. And then at least by the following December, you would have to have your building permit. And that time frame would help us with our housing targets as well under this program. So really it's within about 18 months or so for doing the whole thing to get to a permit. But the time frame of the application coming in to council deciding is within 2 months.
Great. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.
Next item relates to the Housing Accelerator Fund Plan Initiative relating to Development Incentive Review. I have motion that report CMO 4525 relating to Housing Accelerator Fund Action Plan Initiative Development Incentive Review for Housing be received for information. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Taylor.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments to implement the 2025 Transportation Master Plan. I have motion that report PD 4725 relating to the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments to implement the 2025 Transportation Master Plan be received for information, and further, the council authorized staff to prepare amendments to the City of St. Thomas official plan and zoning bylaw 50-88 to implement the 2025 Transportation Master Plan, and further, that a public meeting be scheduled for November the 10th, 2025, in accordance with Ontario Regulations 543/06 and 545/06 as amended. Moved by Councillor Herbert, seconded by Councillor Kohler.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments relating to 21 Phillip Street, noting Councillor Baldwin Sands' declaration. I have a motion that report PD 4825 relating to official plan and zoning bylaw amendments relating to 21 Phillip Street be received for information, and further, that a public meeting be scheduled for November the 10th, 2025, in accordance with Ontario Regulations 543/06 and 546/06 as amended. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Councillor Peters.
Thanks, Your Worship. My concern with this that's in front of council is home occupations have always been a challenging issue. And once you open the door on one and start to allow an exception to a home occupation, how are you going to say no to a future application that comes forward? And I just, I cannot support this. I recognize that swimming lessons are vitally important and every child should have swimming lessons. But we've had issues with this property in the past from some of the neighbors. And I just believe that council is opening a door that they may regret opening down the road. Thanks, Your Worship.
Okay. Further questions? Councillor Clark?
I just reiterate what Councillor Peters said. I can't support this motion.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Councillor Wiki?
Thanks. This is just for it to be sent to a public meeting, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, all those in favor of this? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask that again. All those in favor? How many opposed? And that is carried.
Next item relates to the initiation of the community planning permit bylaw process for the Elm Wilson study area. I have motion that report PD 4925 relating to the initiation of the community planning permit bylaw process for the Elm Wilson study area be received for information, and further the council initiate a public process to review and prepare a community planning permit bylaw for the study area as shown in the attachment to report PD 4925. Moved by Councillor Wookie, second by Councillor Peters.
Questions or comments? Councillor Peters?
Thanks, Your Worship. It is so exciting to see this. When I came on council 37 years ago, in 1988, the railway buildings were still standing, and we had a developer from London couple developers who were looking at redeveloping the property, and it has sat stagnant for 37 years. 37 years. So this is a really exciting evening for me on a number of fronts, but to see this finally coming to fruition after 37 years is great news.
Yes. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Next item relates to proposed zoning bylaw amendment for temporary use zones. I have motion that report PD 5125 relating to proposed zoning bylaw amendment for temporary use zones be received for information, and further the council authorize staff to prepare an amendment to zoning bylaw 50-88 to implement provisions for temporary use zones, and further that a public meeting be scheduled for November 10th, 2025 in accordance with Ontario Regulation 545/06 as amended, and further the council directs staff to undertake a future official plan amendment to amend the official plan to provide policy direction to evaluate proposed temporary use zones. Moved by Councillor Kohler, second by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
That concludes the items on the agenda for this committee, Your Worship, unless there are any further items from the members.
Seeing none,
We'll now move into community engagement and services. First item relates to 2025 Remembrance Day service request for road closure. I have motion that report ES 4525 relating to the 2025 Remembrance Day service request for road closure be received for information, and further council approve the temporary closure of Moore Street between Talbot Street and Center Street from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Tuesday, November the 11th, 2025 to allow for the Remembrance Day service. Moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to road closure request for the Pumpkin Prowl. I have motion that report ES 4425 relating to the Pumpkin Prowl road closure request be received for information, and further council approve the temporary closure of Talbot Street from Ross Street to Elgin Street on Friday, October the 24th, 2025 between the hours of 4:30 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. to allow for the Pumpkin Prowl event. Moved by Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Worship. I can remember when I first went on Talbot Street a few years ago to go up and see what things were happening. I couldn't believe the number of people on Talbot Street. Thousands of people. The kids were going from store to store. It was a great venture for Talbot Street. I mean, if it continues, this is a fantastic thing and I hope it continues. So I totally support it. It's just such a fantastic night to see all the kids all dressed up and everything. So anyway, thank you.
I want to give Councillor Taylor some credit on this. I know that he kind of helped start this, and it gives him a chance to wear his orange jacket, his jack-o'-lantern jacket. And I mean, the fact that he has the, wherewithal to do that is incredible. But I agree with you, Councillor Herbert. This is a fantastic event downtown where many people come safe trick-or-treating with their children and businesses showing off their wares on the same night. So, further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Unless there are any further items from the members for this committee, we'll now move into infrastructure and civic operations. The first item relates to the 2025 Transportation Master Plan. We have Mr. Kevin Jones from Paradigm Transportation Solutions Limited with us this evening to provide a presentation relating to the St. Thomas Transportation Master Plan refresh.
Great. Well, welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. I'm pleased to be here tonight to present our recommendations for your Transportation Master Plan refresh.
Perfect.
So starting off with what is a Transportation Master Plan? Well, it's a strategic plan. It's really intended to support growth, guide your investment decisions, and guide how you apply transportation policies around the community over the next 25 to 30 years. The plan is shaped by your official plan and your strategic plan, but it also informs future updates to your strategic plan and your official plan over time. You'll also use this document to update your development charge bylaw and to do your annual capital budgeting and your annual operating budgets over the next 10 years as council can afford to make investments in the transportation plan. The city is planning for growth. By 2051, the city of St. Thomas is expected to double in growth based on forecasts prepared by some of your consultants. And we know a lot of that is being driven by a lot of the economic development and industrial development happening in the city. But there's also growth outside your boundaries that's going to affect your transportation system. And some of that growth potential has been factored into this transportation plan, so you are ready for that growth as it happens. Also, the province is investing in infrastructure to support St. Thomas, which is going to give you a better connected city that connect you to other areas in the provincial highway system, which should really foster some of the industrial growth that you're planning for. We did engage the public in the decision-making process through the Transportation Master Plan. We had an online public survey. We had about 190 responses to that, answering a bunch of questions about needs, priorities, opportunities, and how the city should be investing in their transportation system. We held 2 public open house events to gather input from people and to present ideas and get feedback as well. We had stakeholder meetings with the development community and with your adjacent municipalities to understand their implication, their growth aspirations, some of their infrastructure recommendations, and how to integrate that with the recommendations of our plan. And there was also a youth engagement strategy that was sort of run in parallel to our Transportation Master Plan. We had 72 students from the Students Build Cities program, and they gave us valuable input on how to shape transportation for their needs, because it's them we're planning for today, and they'll be the inheritors of your decisions and our collective recommendations. What we did here was enhancing the transit system is really needed to support the growth that you have planned for the community. Along with that, developing a strong network of pedestrian cycling routes, preferably separated from traffic. That was the preference we heard from the public, and that's sort of what we're seeing emerging in a lot of communities now, that if you really want to get a lot of people choosing to cycle, separate them from traffic as much as you can. Also, we'll need to update some parking policies and manage transportation demand as we accommodate growth as well. We also heard about the need for a more strategic approach to investments in road improvements. So not just widening every road, but taking a targeted approach. So setting a transportation vision for 2051 really tried to frame a multimodal transportation system that really promotes connectivity for places and people to jobs and activity areas. And we've described that through mode share targets. So right now, about 0.3% of all daily trip making in the city occurs by transit, about 5% is by active transportation. We think you can achieve, we know you can achieve 6% by 2051 of trips made by transit and 10% of trips made by active transportation, walking and cycling. Those are achievable targets we've set, and it's based on what others have already managed to achieve when they're at the size that you're planning for. Key benefits of this is you support your future land use plans. You are already doing the right types of land use planning. You're putting intensification in your downtown. Those are all things that are supportive of active transportation and transit. But this also reduces some of your road widening needs, particularly in the downtown where you don't have the space to widen roads continuously. Investing in transit and active transportation there makes a lot of sense. And you can also make a dent in your emissions from the transportation sector by shifting more and more trips to use non-polluting forms of transportation. So the key elements of our TMP refresh involve planning for a modern transit system, providing an interconnected active transportation network, optimizing your existing roads, plus making strategic investments in road widening where needed, and then putting together a suite of policy measures that are designed to support all the infrastructure, but also support some of the behavioral change that will encourage people to shift to other modes of travel. So what do we mean by planning for a modern transit system? Well, this is perhaps the most critical part of this transportation master plan refresh, and it's a bit different from the transportation master plan you did in 2021. We went and did an extensive benchmarking exercise, and we did talk to you back about a year ago in November about that direction for transit. And what we found is municipalities that are already at the size that you're planning towards are investing in transit, and they're getting results. They're getting the higher ridership numbers, they're getting the higher mode shares, and that's taking pressure off some of their road system, taking pressure off their need for road widening. So to do that, 5 key priorities we've identified based on looking at your existing transit operations is to fix transit coverage gaps in the fixed route system over time, extend your hours of fixed route service to serve more customers reliably and on a sort of a fixed schedule, provide service to your new growth areas as they develop and emerge, add new fixed routes to reduce journey times, because journey times is a critical factor that will decide on whether someone decides to take transit or looks for another way to get around. And then increase your bus frequency over time to encourage higher ridership as you continue to make investments in the system. So to do that, we developed 2 conceptual networks to help frame what this would look like and also to do some cost estimating. The first is an interim network that's really designed for about a population of about 55,000. It's designed to get you to about 1% of all your trip making by transit. And it should increase your transit ridership from about 150,000 trips per year now to about 250 to 300,000 when it's emerged. It still builds on your existing hub and spoke system. You'll still use your on-demand services to supplement that service, where it makes sense, and particularly in some of your new growth areas. Over time, we will transition, or the plan is to transition to more of a grid style network. What that does is it reduces your passenger travel times, so they're not running long fixed routes. It increases the ability to make connections between different areas of the city quicker, and you can actually extend your hours of service and add bus frequency and extend service out into your new growth areas without making your routes overly long, because overly long routes tend to result in long journey times, which make people think of not using transit. So we are seeing a gradual shift from the on-demand service to more of a focus on fixed route service. And what will happen is your on-demand service will transition again to serve some periods of time when fixed route doesn't make as much sense, and to serve some of your new growth areas to build ridership where you maybe don't have enough demand to put a fixed route in, but you can use on-demand to get people using transit. This network is designed for a population of 80,000, so you will get there over time, or this won't happen on day one. We're looking at targeting 6% of all your trip making by transit by 2051. Average route frequency would be about 15 to 20 minutes between buses. So that's a marked increase in service levels, which will make wait times a lot shorter and journey times a lot shorter. And this should target about 3.2 million transit trips per year. And there's a number of communities that are already hitting this target at that population level. So we know it is achievable. To support that, you'll also have to make some investments in in investment in new larger buses, because your existing buses have a fixed capacity. And when you're carrying, higher volumes, you will need to look at larger buses, probably a new bus garage and some maintenance facilities to take care of those assets, new accessible stops and shelters to make passenger amenities much more friendly for transit. And we're also identifying that you'll probably want to look to electrification of your buses as you're making new bus purchases decisions. And it kind of goes along with the theme of what you're building here in St. Thomas. So that's a bit of a nod to your existing industrial plans. And then integration with transit outside the community as well. So with Middlesex and some of the other neighboring municipalities that are seeing growth and providing that service. The next part is an interconnected active transportation system. We've identified about 120 kilometers of new facilities, up from your existing 27 kilometers of existing facilities in the city. And what this is really designed is to make it easy for people to choose to walk and cycle more often for some of the trips. You're not going to use all the trips by walking and cycling, but just for example, if one day you decide to walk to work out of 5 days, if everyone did that, you'd reduce your travel demand by 20% right off the bat. And that's not a hard stretch. So this network is designed to try and make that choice a little more easy for people. There's 75 kilometers of new facilities on your existing road corridors. And you'll go through that process, and the engineering department will look at what's the best facility as they do those designs. 26 kilometers we've identified as potential new facilities, taking advantage of opportunities to reuse rail corridors if they become available for other uses, but also planning out corridors in some of your new growth areas before development happens. So you've got those linkages and networks. And we've also identified 19 kilometers of new facilities that you would implement in partnership with your adjacent municipalities to extend your network into those areas and make sure that there are facilities available. And there's an implementation priority looks at a priority network. So we've identified a number of the links that we think will create a nice spine of a system. And the target is to try and get that done in the next 5 years. And that's how we've done our costing, with the other supporting facilities to come. One of the other areas is looking at the Center Street Active Transportation Corridor. This was an interesting project that we've highlighted in the TMP. It's a real opportunity to transform your downtown and to put an east-west active transportation corridor through your downtown, just south of Talbot Street. And it takes advantage of the existing elevated park. It takes advantage of what you've already done on Center Street with some of the cycling facilities you've put in place there. The emerging growth area around the Queso lands and the potential redevelopment there. And we've got some case studies that we looked at of how that area can redevelop in a pedestrian-friendly area, and then connecting to your rail corridors to provide that link to the other side of the city and out to your industrial areas. So this becomes a viable route that people can even use to cycle to work if they want during good weather. This is what I call a bit of a signature project for the city. And if you can try to implement this over time, I think you'll really see some great benefits. But you also have some other areas you need to invest with new crossings of Highway 3. Highway 3, while it's a benefit, does create some barriers to active transportation. So we've identified a new bridge across Highway 3 at Hughes Street, and then widening some of your existing crossings to make sure you've got active transportation facilities there. Sorry. The spine of your transportation system is going to continue to be your road network. So we have looked at your existing road network. We are recommending a few changes to your road classification system to really support growth, modernize your network a bit, but also tie some of your policies to these road classifications. So certain roads you would have different right-of-way expectations, and they play a different role in your network. And that would also frame how you do some of your safety programs and so forth. So the upgraded road network classification is a key part of the road network improvement plan. But then there's infrastructure as well. We've identified 34 different road improvement projects, and they're really separated into two types. There's a bunch of projects that are capacity-related projects, road widenings, that will provide the needed capacity that you need to support growth within the city and outside the city. And then there's a lot of optimization projects where it's intersection improvements, some corridors that can be optimized to move traffic a little bit better and support all the users on those corridors. And then there's some projects that would be implemented by others, either by MTO or by the county and the municipalities to provide that connectivity through through the city. And those are joint projects that you'll have to work on with your partners as time goes on. And the transportation policies to support the plan are just as important as the infrastructure recommendations. We've identified 5 key policy frameworks, some policies to support your goals towards enhancing transit, some policies to manage transportation demand, and to embrace new technologies that are emerging on the transportation scene, and to support active transportation, and finally, road safety. And you've already made a number of investments and measures in these areas. So really, this is not a lot of new stuff. In terms of supporting transit, transit fare incentive programs are important factors when you're trying to build ridership. A number of municipalities are doing free transit for youth. You do have an opportunity with Fanshawe to look at a universal transit pass for post-secondary students. A lot of communities also use that to get the younger generation using transit, but also gives them a lot of options for how they commute around through the city. Education and marketing and parking management are also key to driving transit ridership. I know you've already got it in place to do a parking study. Extending that to look at how pricing can influence people's behaviors would be a good supportive measure. For managing transportation demand, that's really looking at reducing the need for travel, shifting travel to off-peak periods, encouraging shorter trips to look at walking and cycling, and putting infrastructure into support, like bike racks, sidewalks, trails, and transit passes are all important programs to overcome barriers that people always cite as, why don't you walk or cycle more? And then school travel programs could be a double benefit. One, it gets kids using other modes of travel, but where's the worst congestion in your morning? Is around school areas. And good travel programs can help manage some of those safety issues and congestion around school areas. We've developed an electric vehicle charging network to support electrification of the private fleet over time as that occurs. We also recommend developing a long-term electric vehicle strategy to look at how you can further support electrification of vehicles in the fleet. Developing a shared mobility strategy, looking at things like scooters and e-bikes and how they fit on your system, where they can go. There's lots of different ways of managing those. Investing in an advanced traffic signal system is something we recommended for the city to optimize the flow on some of your corridors, and also to look at things like putting transit priority. And so on some of your frequent routes, you can use your signal system to give buses a bit of a head start over vehicles. And then looking at implementing an administrative penalty system to sort of take the pressure off the court system for some of parking infractions and the like. Supporting active transportation looks at policies designed to make walking and cycling viable choices for more trips. Filling in missing sidewalks in neighborhoods is a key factor. We've identified about 67 kilometers of missing sidewalks in the city. And setting up a program to do that gradually. We've actually set up a prioritization system in the Transportation Master Plan to help you decide which ones make the most sense to do first. Investing in amenities and wayfinding for your trail system and looking at enhanced maintenance of your trail system so that more people can rely on that as a mode of transportation all year long, or at least extending it into the winter months. Our road safety program recommendations, you've already started. We've helped to develop a traffic calming policy through some work as part of this project. You've got a community safety zone policy. You've been talking about a speed management program. Those are all good road safety programs to implement to help you manage your system. A few new initiatives we have identified is a pedestrian safety plan, looking at where you put in crossings to, again, tie into your active transportation network to provide protected crossings for users. And then look at improving your access to monitor collision data and really feed your road safety program so you can focus on where you're having issues and where you have opportunities. And then developing a speed limit policy so you have consistent ways of applying speed limits across the community. So implementing the plan is going to take some time. As I mentioned, this is a 30-year plan. It includes an expanded fixed route transit system, a number of new active transportation facilities. We've got 66 other recommendations to help you guide your implementation. And while that is a scary number at the bottom, please keep in mind that is a 30-year plan, and you will make those investments as you can afford to. So this is, as growth occurs, you'll make investments. As you can afford to, you'll make investments. This lays out a roadmap, and one of the things about transportation master plans is there's really a good idea to come in and check in every 5 years to make sure that the plan's still on track. And if things change, you can adjust your plan to accommodate that. But you'll see a lot of the road improvements is balanced by the active transportation and transit investments in the plan. So we've developed some key monitoring criteria to help you monitor your plan, so you can check in every 5 years to say, do we need to update, or are things going the way we plan? And they look at, the share of trips made by different modes, the number of annual transit ridership to see if you're making some headway there, and looking at your transit service hours on a per capita basis and your success in implementing your active transportation network. These are all good benchmarks to see if the plan, if you're managing to maintain the plan, but also if the plan seems to be falling out of favor, or if you need to do a refresh. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions you may have, and thank you for your patience.
Great. Questions or comments? Councillor Taylor first.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you can see, this was one heck of a report. I couldn't read it on my computer. I asked for a copy, which I'll give back to them. Somebody else wants to read it, but it is one phenomenal report. I give you credit for what you presented here tonight. A couple of things that I noted in here is protecting the London-St. Thomas rail corridor. I think that's very important, that we should look into that and make sure it talks about actually the connection to the CN line, so that we can bring Port Stanley into this system. Creating a reserve fund for future rail corridor purchases. I think that's a phenomenal idea as well. I like your idea on the wayfinding signage. I've been to lots of other towns and communities where they have maps and directional signs, and I don't think we've got quite what we need here in St. Thomas, but I think we could implement that fairly quickly. And creating a budget for transit marketing to drive ridership. So have I been on a bus? Nope. Should I take a trip on a bus? Probably, just to see this as a counselor. But I was blown away by the EV charging station requirements. Currently, we have about 46 in the city, if I'm not mistaken. And your report talks about driving that into the 480 to 720 EV charging stations by 2031. That is unbelievable that we would need that many, but we're a long way away from that. And a simple little thing that we can do right now is, and I'm passionate about the e-scooter. You've seen me out and about on my e-scooter system. Just sweeping the bike lanes on the roads is a simple little thing that I think should be done quite regularly. If I'm driving my e-scooter down towards Pinafore Park, getting onto Elm Street, the bike lane there is awful. It's full of gravel coming in off the new housing construction that's being done there. So little things like that. But Toronto, and if I'm not mistaken, Strathroy has outlawed or banned the use of e-scooters. And I think it is they're not allowed on bike paths, although it's pretty hard to tell the difference between a bicycle and an e-bike. So we're allowing e-bikes, how are we not allowing e-scooters? But it's actually against the law, my understanding, to use an e-scooter on a bike path or a sidewalk. And I think that St. Thomas should take the path towards allowing that to create, get more people out and about on the paths and understanding what we've got here in the St. Thomas. And also the survey size was fairly small, like you had mentioned, 190. I think we had 245 with a couple of the public information centers on the online survey. But one of the recommendations is, how can the city get involved in the 5-year review plan, so that when we come up to our next 5-year review, we have encouraged more people to actually get involved in the survey. And somehow through the city, I'm pretty sure we can do that with our social media notifications or notifications in our tax bills or whatever it happens to be, but getting more people involved so that we have more than 250 people helping us with this project, which is phenomenal. So I give you credit. Thank you very much for the report, and look forward to the implementation of a few, if not all, of the recommendations. Thank you.
I have Councillor Baldwin Sands next, Councillor Herbert after.
First, again, I also would like to say thank you. I've been involved in some of these studies for a number of times, and I was drawing up some of those from the past and bringing them forward. So I appreciate you're talking about bringing it back every 5 years for more discussion. When you talk about the school travel program, and it's, I will say, being involved in the Locks Morrison, they are still doing the walking school bus. And I think and very much appreciate what Southwest Public Health and the initiatives that they did and how it is coming to fruition and how you put that in your plan. That's the first one I've noticed. The next is the EV charging stations, like Councillor Taylor had pointed out. But in addition to that, I've been noticing the number of students that are using electric mobile devices in order to get to school. And having those active transportation pathways, having the ability to plug in is very important, especially when we have more and more people using those very innovative ways. And it's a very fast changing industry. And it just was very interesting on Friday, again, to see how many were using our active pathways to get to and from school. Then connecting the last phase for the north part of the city of St. Thomas, I am very, very grateful. It's something that I've been advocating for a very, very long time. And to see that item completed would be very satisfying. So thank you for emphasizing getting that out. And the only comment that I would make is, I think like my other fellow members of council, we all had an opportunity to go to the mega site and see where the parking lots are and how far the parking lots are from the actual site itself. And where you propose doing that off South Edgware is a long way from even those parking lots. So I would just make a recommendation that it be the stop for the bus not come from South Edgware, but from what is considered gate 10, I believe. And that gives direct access to the parking lots and maybe looping back down Electric Avenue. And that's the only feedback that I have at this time. And thank you again for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. Well, great report. There's no question it's an eye opener. And I too had the opportunity, I picked up one of the master plans a few weeks ago. It's overwhelming when you start to read it, the different areas. One of the things that there's no question we have to look at transit. When we open up power company, we better have a bus running out there all the time for people to get in and out and right into the city. I thought it was great you had the youth. I'd love to hear their report. You got 90 students giving their comments. I'll bet that was pretty interesting because they're looking from their part. They ride buses to school. They want to get to places. They want to get to Fanshawe, you know, stuff like that in Western. So I think that was a great area. I could go on and on. It was just overwhelming when I read that. And I don't know where we're going to start. I don't know where we're going to get the money, but those are important things. And even the 5-year recheck, we could recheck it once a year or every 2 years and start looking at it to make sure we're into the right direction. 5 years is an optional report, but fantastic. It's a great eye opener. That's all I can say. So thank you for your hard work on it. So thanks.
Councillor Clark?
Thanks, Your Worship. You mentioned Barrie and some other centers that have moved to free transit. And I'm just wondering if you did any modeling as to kind of the point where you can save money on transit by making it free because you don't have to do some other things. For example, you know, you've listed over the 30 years, you know, $200 million worth of new cost to add routes or to add buses and things like that, and whether or not you can drive, whether you could save money by driving membership ridership by making it free and not have to do some of the other more costly recommendations.
Through your worship, we didn't specifically look at free transit on its own, but what we did do is we built a transportation model to help us understand travel patterns in the community. And what we did was we tested different sort of transit mode share targets. So we had a 4% target, a 6% target. We actually recommended the 6% target. And what we found is that took a lot of pressure off some of the roads, particularly in the downtown. So there's some savings on road widening in the downtown, particularly in areas where you don't want to be widening some of these roads because they're already built up, they're already constrained. You'd be buying out rows of houses to do that. And transit makes more sense in that case. And that's why we did a sort of a targeted road widening program. On some of your other corridors, you'll do road widening, but in the downtown, invest in transit, active transportation. And you know, we know from looking at other communities, you can get to those levels. Whether you do the free transit for youth or not, you can get to those levels of ridership if you put in the network and the services to support it. But a lot of the communities that are pushing the envelope are doing the free transit for youth to get them to be frequent users early. It transitions to post-secondary, and then it transitions into as they're young adults. You know, they may not use transit for all their trips, but they won't be scared of it, and they'll use it for some of their trips where it makes sense.
Okay,
Just also wondering about the recommendation for Burwell through to Fairview Ave to be a 3-lane, not 4-lane. Just any thoughts around that in terms of why that recommendation?
Through you, that was a sort of an optimization project. And in some areas, you've got some reserve capacity that could be, allow for some freeing up some space. Providing turn lanes is a big part. So where you have a 4-lane road, but you don't have turn lanes, actually hit me on the way in today on Talbot coming in. Someone stopped dead in front of me to turn left at a little side road, and I almost hit the back of them because my mind was wandering about what I was going to say tonight. But as an example, where adding a turn lane can actually be a safety improvement and an operational improvement. And taking away 4 and converting it to 3 makes a lot of sense in a lot of corridors. Thanks.
one more.
And my
We're
last
going
one,
to have a public meeting on this in just a couple of weeks.
my last one though was just, I know this is big picture, but small picture, there was a recommendation that we had already voted at one point to not even do the background and planning work. And that is the extension of Balaclava Street up through the middle of Morrison and Locke's Playground. And so I just flagged that as something that we've, as a council, have already suggested we were not in favor of.
Okay. If I can, I'm going to reiterate, we're going to have a public meeting on this, and this is our chance to hear it tonight, read it and understand it. So Councillor Peters?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'll be relatively quick. Great to see the Hughes Street Bridge being proposed because we need to connect to my old favorite street, Tecumseh Street, and get that connection north. I look forward to the days that there's no municipal boundaries between St. Thomas and the County of Elgin. Because if you want a transit system that is truly going to work, it needs to not have that artificial municipal boundary. We need that ability to go to the psych hospital, to Talbotville, and someday down the road, all these interconnections will take place because there will be no boundaries between St. Thomas, Central Elgin, Southwold, and the County of Elgin.
I love your outlook. Councillor Gibson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to say thank you very much for the information. It's very well done. And I do appreciate the idea that we should visit it quite often. And you mentioned every 5 years, and I would like to say to what Councillor Herbert said, maybe even 3 years would be best, because that way we're halfway through amid of our next election, and we can probably have a budget in before we have an election, which I really like. The other, I would just like to refer to what Councillor Clark had mentioned about the end of Balaclava. I voted against having a street going through there, but I was in favor of having a trail lane going through there. Thank you.
Councillor Wookey?
Thanks, Your Worship. What I just want to say that I really appreciate this as a health promotion report. That's what I think of it as, more than a transportation master plan, because this is what we're doing to help encourage people to be outside and active. And that's what I care a great deal about. So when I read this, what I see is an opportunity for people of the City of St. Thomas to be just much healthier in the long run. And I think that is the ultimate outcome of what we're trying to do here. Thank you.
Thank you. And first of all, I'll thank what all the others have said. It's a great report. It's forward thinking for a number of years. It works best when we link it to our own strategic plan, and this becomes an arm or leg of that strategic plan. So we can say, we don't have to do everything. I mean, that's a big price tag if we're trying to do everything tomorrow. But if we can look forward in the community as it grows to do some of the really tough things here. So I'll continue to challenge council using Councillor Wookey's words that we don't want a big dusty binder up on a shelf of either the transportation master plan or our own strategic plan. They've got to be married, and we've got to do them over the right period of time that you've asked us to do here. So gives us a lot of school for thought. And I've already been approached by a couple of citizens who said, I want to be part of your active transportation committee. I'm going to put them in charge, of course. But the fact that we've already teased them enough with what we're saying here, and I love the number of kilometers you're talking about on active trails. So thank you for the hard work. We're going to have an open meeting, a public meeting on this very shortly. And I'm asking all of those watching at home and those that are recording this for the press to get as many people to that public meeting as we can too, as we change bylaws to accept this as part of our official plan. But truly, this group needs to do the work as part of our strategic plan. It's where we link budgeting to action. And if we do that well, all of this can come to fruition and in a positive way. And thank you for helping us do it.
Your worship, if there's no further comments, I do have motion that report ES 4325 relating to the 2025 Transportation Master Plan be received for information, and further the council endorse the 2025 Transportation Master Plan as the recommended transportation policies, strategies, and projects to support growth to the year 2051 while continuing to provide sustainable and safe infrastructure. And further, the council directs staff to file a notice of study completion and commence the 30-day public review period in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Assessment Act. Moved by Councillor Kohler, second by Councillor Gibson.
I won't ask for further questions or comments, but I will. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your work.
Next item relates to hazardous waste service agreements. I have a motion that report ES 4125 relating to hazardous waste service agreements be received for information, and further that a bylaw be prepared to authorize mayor and clerk to execute a collection service agreement between the City of St. Thomas and Automotive Materials Stewardship Inc., and further that a bylaw be prepared to authorize mayor and clerk to execute a collection service agreement between the city and Product Care Association. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Taylor.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Your worship, unless there are any further items from the members for this committee, we'll now move into corporate governance. First item relates to council's updated procedural bylaw. I have a motion that report CC 1225 relating to council's updated procedural bylaw be received for information, and further council authorize the preparation of an updated procedural bylaw for council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Kohler.
Questions or comments? Councillor Peters?
Thanks very much, Worship. I just want to commend staff for this great report. I certainly would encourage council to focus in on that one meeting a month where you can get deep dive into an issue. I really miss that. The conversations that I had, I would love to have seen council go back to the committee system. But that will be for future councils to consider. And the only comment I would make to the clerk is when there's clause 2.6C1, no person shall display any banner, placard in the room, etc. You may want to add clothing to that as well too, because I've seen lots of anti-political shirts over the years. So you may want to add.
I may own some. Yes.
I probably do own some.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Your worship, unless there are any further items for this committee, council will now reconvene into regular session. I have a motion that the recommendations, directions, and actions of council and committee of the whole, as recorded in the minutes of this date, be confirmed, ratified, and adopted. Moved by Councillor Wookey, second by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
No reports of committees. We'll now move into petitions and communication. One communication for this evening, a request for a proclamation and flag raising for International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. I have a motion that Council of the City of St. Thomas proclaim October 17th, 2025 as International Day for the Eradication of Poverty in the City of St. Thomas, and that the Coalition to End Poverty flag be flown on October 17th, 2025. Moved by Counselor Wookey, seconded by Counselor Herbert.
Questions or comments? I have one, Madam Clerk. It says here that a signed certificate of acknowledgement be presented by the mayor. Is that different than a proclamation?
Your worship, I believe that's just semantics, and they should be providing that document in advance to the mayor's office for your review.
Okay, that's what I was worried about, that we're asking me to sign something and it's not attached to this report. Okay, that being asked for, any questions, further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
We'll now move into unfinished business of council. Unless there are any items from the members.
Councillor Baldwin-Sands?
Thank you. It allows me to once again talk about the Health Recruitment Scholarship, which is open until November the 25th. This is our first point of contact for local residents across St. Thomas and Elgin County that are entering or are in medical school. It's $1,000 a year for up to 5 years. For those seeking more and more about the scholarship, I ask them to contact the clerk's office. Thank you.
Further questions under unfinished business or information? Seeing none?
We'll now move into new business of council.
Maybe the first time in my life I didn't want to go to new business. Councillor Peters.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. When I arrived in this council chamber 37 years ago, we would stand up and address, at that time, Her Worship. And I have a message to convey to my council colleagues this evening. Dear Mayor Preston and City Council members, please accept my resignation as a City Councillor effective at the adjournment of the October 14th Council meeting. I'm proud and honored to have served this present City Council under the leadership of Mayor Joe Preston. I want to thank the citizens of St. Thomas over the years, my council colleagues past and present, and offer gratitude to the hardworking and dedicated city staff. I wish you all the best in the future. Your Worship, it is 37 years ago that I arrived in this council chamber. I was 25 years old. I had two amazing mentors, one by the name of Shine Palmer, who was my neighbor, who taught me so much about a community and the importance of giving back to a community. 37 years ago as well, too, Peter Lang stepped down from City Council. Peter Lang had served the city 2 terms as mayor, but he had served for 54 years as councillor. And I have this great photo of Peter passing his hat to me 37 years ago and passing that hat to a new generation. And tonight I'm going to be passing my hat that I don't have on to a new generation. And I just want to say thanks to the citizens of St. Thomas who have entrusted in me so many times over the years, not only here at the city level, but at the provincial level too. I've been honored and privileged to do things that most people will never ever have a chance to do. I had a chance to serve as an alderman at the time, mayor for 7.5 years, the MPP for the riding of Elgin, Middlesex, London for 12 years, and had the unique opportunity to see the Ontario legislature from 3 different sides, 4 years in opposition, 4 years in government, as Minister of Agriculture and Food, Minister of Labor, and then 4 years as Speaker of the legislature. And that was a tremendous opportunity. But it was a tremendous opportunity to come back and rejoin City Council in 2018. And the past 7 years have been just tremendous. Some people are going to ask, why are you doing this at this time now? Well, many of you know 1 year ago, I assumed a new position as the chair of the Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers. And I've been wearing 2 hats. And those of you that know me know that I need to be focused in my life. And I'm not doing justice to both jobs, trying to balance between the two. And so I've made the decision that I'm going to step aside from council and focus my efforts on probably the most important agricultural sector in Ontario. Did you know, Ontario, we're home to the 2nd largest greenhouse footprint in the world, second only to the Netherlands. That is really something to be proud of. And we can grow our food year round, and the potential to grow so much more in Ontario is just amazing. But there's a lot of issues facing the greenhouse sector, and that's why I need to devote my time to that. We have a free trade agreement that's coming to an end, and 90% of what we grow in Ontario is going stateside. We have provincial issues where we need infrastructure investments to help to support the greenhouse sector. And we have municipal issues as well that are facing the greenhouse sector. So in many ways, I'm still going to be involved in politics. I'm just going to be in vegetable politics. And very much looking forward to that. I have so many highlights that I can look back on over the past 37 years, and 30 years as an elected official. I'm 62 years old, and half my life I've been an elected politician. So it's time to move on. It's time to spend some more time with my lovely spouse, Karen McDade, and having my family here tonight, my sister Janet, my brother Joey. They've been here for every one of my elections. And we are going out to the cemetery tonight. We'll go out and say hi to mom and dad, as I've done for every one of my elections. And we'll continue to do that. I have a lot of highlights and lowlights, but they really are highlights of so many great things that we've been able to accomplish working together as a community. And that's what politics is all about. It's having that ability to agree to disagree. And we can lose a vote, but we can walk out of the room at the end of the evening and we are all still friends. And our job is to do what is in the best interest of the community. So yeah, I can think of a lot of things that I could reminisce about tonight, but I'm just going to reminisce about two things of unfinished business that I want to leave with this council. One was identified in the Transportation Master Plan this evening, and that is get the corridor reopened for the London and Port Stanley Railway. That has been sitting like that almost as long as the 37 years of the rail lands that I made reference to, because it was in 1990 that CN ripped out those tracks. So that's 35 years, and that's a piece of unfinished business. And the one I'm going to leave you with, and I made some comment in the Transportation Master Plan, I would encourage you all, Mayor Preston, to seriously look at the relationship between the city and the county. Continuing to duplicate services of 2 library boards, 2 homes for the aged, 2 planning departments, 2 engineering departments, and I can go on and on. We are positioned for growth, and I'm so proud that under Mayor Preston's leadership, I've been part of a council that is going to see the most significant investment ever made into this community. And that's something that collectively we can all be very proud of, and I'm going to look back at fondness over the years. So with that, I just want to say thanks. Thanks to my family. Thanks to the staff. Because staff is what makes it happen. We can do our jobs, but our staff have been there. And I've had some great staff over the years, not only here at the municipal level, but at the provincial level as well, too. And staff is what makes things happen. And I wish you well as well, too, as the world has changed, because I can tell you 37 years ago, there was no social media. There were no keyboard warriors. There was no Facebook, and it's so easy to be that armchair politician sitting in front of your computer at home. But if you really want to make your mark, run for council. Because my line has always been, and I have an election sign I put out every year, if you don't vote, don't complain, folks. Don't complain. So with that, Mayor Preston, and to my council colleagues, to all of you, Jeff and Gary and Rose and Earl and Jim and Lori and Steve, all the best. And thanks. It's been a real privilege and a real honor to have worked with all of you. And with that, I bid my adieu. Thanks, St. Thomas. Here. Thanks.
This isn't goodbye. This is just, we'll see you later. You know, Steve, you and I have worked together
Lisa.
incredibly over the number of years we've both been politicians, and often wearing different uniforms, but certainly working together for the betterment of Elgin and St. Thomas through the whole time. I share with most of my friends how easy that was to get things done because you were there. I've shared the story a number of times today about It's not hard to call Steve for advice because you're never going to get you should do. You're going to get here's what I think. And he shares great knowledge with you on how to move things forward. I still love the fact that we can call each other and ask for advice. And that's not going to stop. I don't know what I could tell you about greenhouse vegetables, but I know I'm still calling you about political issues. And oftentimes we call just to gossip about other levels of government too. But that's a different story. Look, I'm losing a great friend and a great counselor at this table tonight. And it does hurt. But what I'm not losing is a friend. He'll still be there. And your love of St. Thomas, and you know where every bone is buried. You know the dog that brought the bone there and buried it. You know the birthday of that dog that brought the. Anyway, Steve, I love your history. I love the time you've spent being a huge part of this community. When we talked some 7 years ago about coming back to council yourself and myself coming to council then, because I've never been here, it was easy to make the decision to do so because you were coming. And I can't say anything but thank you. On behalf of the city of St. Thomas, thank you for what you've given us over more than half of your lifetime. What you've given this area. We would not be who we are today or looking at the bright future we're looking at if you'd not been a big, big part of doing that. I love you. I'll continue to call you. Thank you.
Your worship, the next order of business are bylaws. I have a motion that leave be granted to bring in the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
I have a motion by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Clark, that the bylaws be now read a first time, referred to council and committee of the whole, and read a second time.
Questions or comments? I forget where I am now. But questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Carried.
First bylaw.
First bylaw is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on the 14th day of October, 2025.
Sorry, questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next bylaw, please.
Second bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of the corporation to a certain agreement between the city, James Bandman, and Smart AMS Incorporated.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next bylaw, please.
Third and final bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of the corporation to a certain agreement between the city and Alexander Wilhelm Zulu. This relates to a grant acknowledgement agreement under the Community Improvement Program for the property at 76 Roseberry Place.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I rise and report the successful passing of the three bylaws.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Clark, that the report of council and committee of the whole on the three bylaws be received and adopted. The same be read a third time, engrossed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and numbered.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.
Next order of business is public notice. 3 notices this evening. The first, that a public meeting will be held on November the 3rd, 2025 at 6 p.m. regarding the proposed 2026 sewage service rates. The second, that a public meeting will be held on November the 3rd at 6 p.m. regarding the proposed 2026 water rates, fees, and charges. And the third, that council intends to consider the adoption of the new procedural bylaw and repealing of the existing procedural bylaw 110-82 at its meeting to be held on October the 20th, 2025. Your worship, no further items. At this time, I have a motion for adjournment.
Peter.
Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.